So that is some kind of goals they have to keep in mind before they give this kind of directions to the students. Yeah.
Well, let's change a little bit. How important do you think English is to Taiwan's competitiveness? Can you give some examples?
I think it's quite important. It's crucial if you want to get, we take individual for examples. If you want to get promoted, want to become like the managers in Taiwan, in any kind of international or this kind of foreign companies or even international communities, you must know at least two languages. One is your local language, like Mandarin Chinese. The other is the global language, which is used by most of these in these kind of global communities, right? Because, for instance, if you work for one of the IT company in Taiwan, you have to, right now most of the IT companies have their branches or their factories in other areas, like in Vietnam, in Thailand, or even mainland China, right? If you want to coordinate these kind of meetings, or want to, to do all this kind of coordination, so we have this kind of so-called, right now we have so-called teleconference. So what can you do? You have to sit over there and then talk to the people in Thailand, the people in Japan. So what kind of language you want to use? So
English.
English, of course. That's the only choice we have.
Right.
So in order to get promoted, in order to run this kind of international market, most of the bosses or the CEOs require their own managers or even their engineers to speak this kind of global languages. So I think Taiwan cannot limit itself into this kind of local market. You have to open your market to the whole Asian communities. So the only language you can use is the English language.
Right.
So
well, you would agree that Taiwan is getting there, though.
Yeah, I believe that there's no other alternative, no other futures besides opening your market to the international communities. So international community is the only way that you can just expand or even to boost Taiwan economies here right now. The market here in Taiwan is so so narrow or so limited. It's impossible to support the whole economic how do I say? It's economic bodies in Taiwan. You have to expand, and mainland China, of course, is a very huge market over there. But I don't think that mainland China is the only one over there. You still have to look at the other markets, like in Southeastern Asia or even Northeastern Asia, or even in the Europe markets over there.
So how do you compare Taiwan's English language education with that of China, Japan, and Korea?
Oh, yeah, this is a very it's something I think is very very interesting in this in the way how we talk about the English education here in so-called Northeastern Asia. In my book, I try to divide the English learning models into three types. One is the Northeastern Asia type. The other is the Southeastern Asia type, and the last one is the European one.
Okay.
I believe that in Northeastern Asia we have Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and mainland China. We seem to follow the same models. We always learn English, the language, later before we learn. Before we learn the grammar, and we use so-called in English term we use the so-called cognitive methods. Cognitive method means that you have to understand something, the rules behind the language before you use the language. So Japanese, Korean, Chinese, and Taiwanese always, they have to learn a lot of grammars before. They have to study grammar books first. Then they memorize a lot of the new words, and then they begin to apply that kind of words and grammar into their daily conversations.
Oh, well then otherwise, what would you suggest?
No, I mean, look at those countries and the people in the other countries, like in Southeastern Asia, like Thailand, Singapore, or Malaysia, or Indonesia. Yeah. They learn, I ought to say, street English.
Okay.
Right? They don't pay attention to any kind of grammar rules. They know nothing too much about the so-called infinitive or so the participle phrases. They don't nothing about this kind of.
But then, if you don't get a grammar correct, that's going to affect the future. Ways of learning the language. You do have to cope with tests eventually when you go on to high school or college.
But you pick up the language first, because when you pick up the language, the words first, and you can communicate, And they set up some kind of confidence in their language abilities. And then later, when they come to the higher levels, they can use the grammar as some kind of reminders for them to correct some mistakes they make in their own street English. So I believe that use the language first and the correct English or correct use of the language later. And by doing this way, I mean, our students can set up their own confidence in using the language. Right now, it seems to always want or scare our students away from the use of language, so that you make mistakes in this kind of tense. You forget to use the past tense when you talk about something which happened in yesterday, right? So and the student are frightened by this kind of rules, and they forget. And whenever they want to make us talk about what they did last night, they in their mind they have to think about what kind of a verb they have to use and whether I'm using the right tense or not. So and after have this kind of thinkings about this kind of rules, I don't think that they have any kind of confidence in using the language. So street English first.
Really? But the thing is that once you got so used to street English, do you think it's possible for them to change and correct the English when they grow older?
Yeah, when